Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the BFM generator, or it's an FM generator with both the modulator and carrier being a BAM oscillator. So first of all, I'm going to open up the parameters for the BFM generator, and the way you do that is press Start, then you push up to go to Synth, and you push to the right to select Synth, and then you select Edit Synth, and then you select BFM, and then you select Gen. And now you can see on the screen there is a number of parameters for this particular generator. So the first parameter is called FM params, and so one way that BFM is different from the other generators and effects in PSPSeq is that it actually has 2 pages of parameters associated with it. So the first page is called CAR, and that stands for the carrier parameters. And then if you press up on the D-pad or the analog pad, then you can get to the mod parameters, or the modulator parameters. So in case you're not familiar with how FM works, the basic idea is that you have a waveform, which is called the carrier, whose frequency is modified or modulated by a second waveform, which is called the modulator. The amount of modulation is controlled over time by running the modulator through an envelope. The basic frequency of the waveform is controlled by the frequency of the carrier, while the modulator controls the timbre of the sound. So I'm going to go back to the carrier parameters by pushing down on the analog stick. So pushing down, now I'm back on the carrier parameters. So a lot of what I had to say about the BFM generator is based on what I said about the BAM generator. If you don't understand the basics of how the BAM generator works, then you should go back to the tutorials or the user guide in order to watch or read up on that particular generator. So if you're familiar with the BAM generator, then the first 13 parameters should look pretty familiar. They're the same parameters used in the BAM generator, but these are purely for the carrier portion of the synthesizer. The main frequency of the generator is set by the C-freq1 parameter, and the frequency of oscillator 2 is set by C offset. So you can see that the frequency of this generator is E4, which is about 160 hertz. And then the offset is 1.0, which means that the second generator, or the second oscillator, has the same frequency as the first oscillator. The sample and hold times are set by the CH1 and the CH2 parameters. And the waveforms for the first and second oscillator are set by the CW type 1 and CW type 2 parameters. One thing to keep in mind with FM is that as the level of modulation increases, the frequency of the harmonics rapidly increases as well. If you use waveforms with lots of high-frequency content, like square waves, you're likely to have a great deal of non-harmonic distortion due to aliasing. Waveforms that are not band-limited in PSPSeq, and I don't do anything to protect against aliasing noise. So the carrier generator also has the oscillator mix and sync parameters called C-os-mix and also C-os-sync. Lastly, it also supports pitch bends, just like in the BAM generator, which I explained in the previous tutorial. And those pitch bends are controlled by X-mult and end offset. So, and this pitch bend is only applied to the carrier frequency, it's not applied to the modulator frequency. So the last 4 parameters in the BFM generator do not exist in the BAM generator, and these are some of the FM-specific parameters. The first one we have is mod index. And if you know FM, then you might be able to guess that this is the index modulation for the modulator. So if this value is 0, then the output isn't modulated at all. So I'm going to set this to 0 by holding down the triangle button and then pushing down on the analog stick. And the reason why I hold the triangle button is because I have all of the control-only steps triggered in the step sequencer, so I want to make sure that every step in the BFM generator has the same modular index value, and by holding triangle, that forces the same value to be loaded into every step in the loop. So now you can hear that that the waveform is not being modulated anymore; it's just a straight sine wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the mod index value up, and you can hear how the characters, the sound of the generator changes. So, the higher the mod index, the more sort of FME the output sounds. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit so that way we can listen to some of the other parameters. So I'm going to bring this down to about 1.5 or so. So actually, I'm going to show you real quick that if you bring this up very high, you can get some very interesting sounds out of the FM generator. And this is without even messing around with any of the other parameters that control the frequency or the different waveforms. So you can get some very interesting sounds out of this. So I'm going to bring this back down to about 1.5, so that way we can hear the other parameters a little more clearly. So the last three parameters, they control feedback and how it's used in the modulator and carrier. So by feedback, I mean that the output of the oscillator is fed back into the input of the oscillator. If the feedback is set to a small amount, it adds a small bit of distortion to the output, and if it's large, then the results become really strange and rather unpredictable.